Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Christopher, and I'm a marketing coordinator for ALA Editions. We are the proud publisher of a new book called 209 Big Programming Ideas for Small Budgets. And we are joined today by the author, Chelsea Price. Chelsea is going to kind of take it away from here, but after her presentation, we'll have a few minutes for a bit of Q&A. So please post your questions into the chat space, and we'll get to those after the show. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Chelsea.
Thank you. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. I am glad to virtually see these numbers keep going up. My name is Chelsea Price. I'm the library director at the Missouri Library. We are located in northern Iowa, almost on like the Minnesota border. And this is my book. Isn't the cover so cute? I can't take credit for it, but I do love it. It is called 209 Big Programming Ideas for Small Budgets. I know that seems just like a random number, but apparently that's somebody's job to go through and count the different ideas. So that's exact. 209 ideas in this little book. So I hope everybody is doing okay. These are the end times, it seems, but I hope everyone's making it through. Iowa, I don't know if I have any other Iowans in here. We're a little bit of a dumpster fire right now, but I hope you all are surviving, if not thriving. So, here we go. Oh no, there we go. You can see that second slide, right, Rob?
Yes, we can see it just fine.
Thank you. I'm just paranoid. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. So this picture, I wanted to include in the book, but the picture quality was apparently not good enough. This is me. I'm about 4 years old at my mom's library that she was the director at when I was growing up. And I want to apologize. I think it's a very cute photo, but I want to apologize for all the stereotypes that I'm perpetuating in this photo. I realize now that not all librarians wear oversized glasses and cardigans draped over their shoulders, but I do appreciate the stamper and the stack of vintage R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike books there. So I've been the director in Missouri for about 5.5 years now, and libraries, though, are kind of in my blood. As I said, my mom was also director of a tiny library when I was growing up for about 15 years. And I would go there after school, and I worked there. But I shelved for her and answered phones throughout high school. And then my mom's mom, my grandma, was a school librarian from ages 40 to 80. So I'm very comfortable around libraries. I'm very comfortable in this position, and it just feels like it's a good fit for me. Before we go any further, I do want you to know I don't claim to be an expert of any kind. I still often don't know what I'm doing, and I do not have a library science degree. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, which I think you'll agree does come in handy sometimes working in a library. But this book is written just from my own perspective, my own experiences, although I have collected a lot of really great contributions from a bunch of libraries around the country in each chapter. And because I am only allowed to get paid for 20 hours of work a week at my library, I do have a couple of side things going on. I'm also a substitute teacher. I have my own pet sitting business, and I'm a frequent volunteer at animal shelters in our area. And dogs are my life. My husband and I don't have kids, so we have spent the last couple of years rescuing elderly and special needs dogs. We have 4 right now, with all kinds of various ailments, and they range from ages 14 all the way up to 18. So they're pretty much our babies. And this is my little library. This is Missouri. We have a population of about 250 people, and it's very rural, super into farming. Our school did close in the early 80s, and that really hurt us and the surrounding towns. who also do not have schools. Now the nearest school in our district is about 25 miles away. The nearest grocery store, movie theater, any source of entertainment is at least 15 minutes away. And we do not have a gas station. We do not have a community center. We don't even have a bank anymore. We've got a fire station, post office, church, bar. Of course, we have a bar, and my little library. So the library has to kind of serve as everything to the community. We're the town's only meeting space. We are the only source of free Wi-Fi in town, and the only source of free entertainment and events within quite a few miles. As I said, we're only open 20 hours a week. I do have a library assistant, so we are a 2-person staff. I'm very lucky to have her. We have a very small budget with not a lot of wiggle room. To be totally candid, our budget was just increased last year from $26,000 a year to $30,000 a year. And yes, that does include employee pay. So we really have to think outside of the box when it comes to spending within our programming budget. And it's been interesting. I wrote this book because it seemed like I really am into reading about programming. And I noticed that there was a gap in the market. There wasn't a lot of literature specifically aimed at rural small libraries with small budgets. So I wanted to help fill that gap. I do hope that this book will appeal not only to small libraries, because all libraries, no matter what their size, love to save money. Who doesn't want to save money? So I do think that libraries of any size can get something out of this book. I also want to say you are doing a great job and your community is so lucky to have you. I just wanted to remind you of that during these times, because whatever you're doing for your community right now is enough. You don't have to be doing all of the things, all of the virtual story times, the virtual book clubs, the virtual trivia nights. I want everyone to just be gentle with themselves. We're all just stumbling along, don't really know what's going on, and we're all just doing our best. And I did see a meme at the beginning of this mess that is COVID. I saw a meme that said something along the lines of, if you aren't using this time to finish that book or finish that project or learn a new skill or get your body right, then you aren't doing it right. And it really pissed me off. And I just want to say, you don't have to be productive all the time if you don't feel you're capable of it. Personally, lately, I consider the day a win if I put pants on. So just the bare minimum here, you guys. We're all just doing the best we can. So I'm going to take you through each section of the book quickly, because I know we have a keynote speaker in about a little over a half an hour. So I'm going to take you through each section of the book, sharing just a few of my favorite ideas and tips from the book. And this is just a tiny, tiny fraction of what is actually in the book. There's a lot of stuff packed in that little book. So the first section is on passive programming, which I love for a small library just because it's easier, it's cheaper, and it doesn't typically require a lot of staff time. It also makes for great social media posts and marketing. People like to see it. And it can increase your interactions with your patrons. I like doing things like scavenger hunts in the library, guess how many pieces of candy in a container. But my favorite is probably doing whiteboard polls. You can not only engage better with your patrons, it helps you get to know your community a little bit better, and get your patrons' opinions on things involving the library. Like, you can ask, do you prefer ebooks or physical books? Or what genre of movies is your favorite? What would you like to see as far as programming in the library? And it's fun. So this picture is not from my book. This is from a programming librarian blog post. They asked about spring break travel. I like the guy who said my bedroom, because that's kind of where we're all at. Remember travel, guys? Wasn't that fun? One of the largest chapters in the book is about low-cost programming because, again, everybody likes to save money. One of my favorite low-cost programs is slime because it's easy and it's relatively cheap. And all kids of every age love slime. And even I love slime. Maybe I do the slime programs more for myself than for the kids, but that's okay. Slime has been a thing for several years now, but it seems to still be super popular, at least in my area. It uses really easy things like cornstarch, contact solution, shaving cream, and all the glue and all the land. And it's so fun. There's a lot of other low-cost ideas in the book. I also talk about, I did a trivia night focused on the TV show called The Office. I'm sure you have heard of it before, but it was one of my very favorite adult programs, and I loved it so much, and it was super reasonably priced. So you can read more about that there. I also talk about upcycling programs, programs using recyclable materials. My favorite of these is life-size board games. Kids love anything like giant or oversized. So this is our life-size Jenga. These are just cardboard pop can boxes wrapped in paper. You can do the same kind of thing for a Lego program, Minecraft, Angry Birds. You can do memory or Scrabble with like giant pieces of cardboard or construction paper. Candyland with a giant cardboard dice and big, again, pieces of colorful paper on the floor. There's a lot of things you can do, and it's a lot of fun. And then there are some free ideas in that chapter as well, or things that can easily be made to be free. One of these ideas is speed dating at your library. This does not mean speed dating to find a lover, although you can do that at your library too if you want. But this is speed dating to find your next favorite book. So each attendee brings either a list or the actual books of like 3 books that they really loved or read recently and want to share. And they just talk a little bit about what the book is about, why they love it. And then everybody goes home with a really long list of books to read, which I can't really afford to add more books to my TBR list because I'm going to be dead and the list is still going to be super long. And this can also be post-COVID. You could do something like this where everybody brings food to share, make it kind of a potluck kind of thing. And yeah, that's just a few of those ideas. The next section is about outreach. I talk about how to get started in your community. One of my favorite easy tips is to act like a tourist in your own town. Go out into the community and see where people tend to gather, and then go there. So like if people hang out at the park, do a park story time. If people are at the farmer's market, set up a table at the farmer's market. If people hang out at the bar like they do in Missouri, you can partner up with the bar and do some kind of like beer taste testing program, something like that. But just see where the people are and figure out how to go there. Things like where to go, tips for when you're out and about. My favorite and most useful tip that I really struggled with at first was be okay with making a fool of yourself. This is particularly helpful during kids events. Don't be afraid to be silly and dance around and sing songs and just, yeah, be silly. And because if you're having a good time, people can pick up on that energy and then they have a good time too. I struggle with this. I'm an extreme introvert and I can force myself to be out there, but it drains all of my energy and I am often covered in sweat, like nervous sweat. I don't know if I'm the only nervous sweater here, but it's not great. And but I forced myself to do it and I got more comfortable each time I did it. And if I can act like a clown in public, so can you, because people really, they pick up on your good time and it becomes their good time. The picture is of a contribution from Christy at the Russell Library in Middletown, Connecticut. And this is Book Yak on a kayak. And it's basically a book club on the water, which I love. It looks so peaceful. And of course, she had to have her attendees sign waivers. And you can read a lot more about that in the book. But that was one of my favorite contributions for outreach. Partnerships is another big part of the book because partnerships are really the cornerstone of the programming that I do at my library. We would not be able to do most of the programs we do without partnerships in our community. So I talk in this chapter about how to get started. Again, I find it's helpful to tour your own community, see what local events are happening, see what businesses are in your area, organizations, nonprofits, clubs, and just kind of take note of that and make friends with those business owners and those club members without immediately asking for something. Form a relationship before you ask them if they want to partner up. So the different sections in this chapter are about partnering with local businesses. The photo on the left is from a floral pumpkin workshop I did at my library. This was a florist who had been running her own business for years in our community, and I contacted her to see if she would want to do something for fall. And this is what she came up with. And I tried to pay her, and she would not take payment. And the only thing she asked of me was that I put her business cards out on the table at the event, which I was more than happy to do. People you know, enlisting the people you know. What I do is I kind of think of the friends and family members I have that have a particular talent, skill, interest, collection, whatever that could make a good potential program. And then I bribe them and nag them until they agree to do it for me. And it works for me. But listen, my mother-in-law teaches a yoga class at the YMCA, and we talked her into offering to do a children's yoga class at one of our summer reading programs. So just stuff like that from the people you know. Hometown heroes are things like the fire chief, the mayor, a basketball player at the high school, therapy dogs. We had a therapy dog program that's on the right at one summer reading, and it was really great. She ran them through obstacle courses. She talked about search and rescue and nose work. And of course, the kids got to pet dogs, which they love animals of any kind. And then finding partnerships that are mutually beneficial. So they help not only the library, but the library helps them as well. So an example of this would be a new business just starting out that might want to attract new customers, or organizations like the Humane Society, who are always looking for potential volunteers, donors, adopters, things like that. They're often pretty eager to partner up with you. And again, you'll find throughout the book, I talk about dogs all the time, you guys. I'm so sorry. But I love partnering with the Humane Society. And then we talk about how to continue and nurture a partnership. Easy things like thank you notes and publicly recognizing your donors on social media, newspaper, newsletters, things like that. And then there also is a chapter on school outreach and school partnerships, because that's kind of like the bread and butter of that. And then summer reading. Oh, summer reading. Summer reading is stressful for a lot of libraries. And in this chapter, I talk about the benefits of summer reading, but I also talk about changing it, the need for it to change. And if your summer reading program works well for you and it doesn't overwhelm you, that's perfect. You can keep it the way it is. But I know that it is stressful for a lot of library staff, and it doesn't have to be. And if there's something you don't like or that isn't working about your program, change it or eliminate it. Like if you don't like forcing kids to track their minutes read, you don't have to do that, or you can do it differently. If you don't like the theme, you can do your own theme, or you don't need to have a theme at all. Or if you hate bribing kids to read to get plastic prizes or like a t-shirt, you don't have to do that either. There are so many prize alternatives out there. I list a few in the book. There are alternatives to tracking minutes read. A lot of stuff you can do to make summer reading easier on yourself. And then on the picture, you'll see on the table is a prize wheel. My brother actually built that for me. And the kids love just spinning the wheel. That's almost like a prize in itself. So I do have, this is at an outreach event, but I do have some regular prizes. Like I just have like stickers, candy bars, color changing pencils, things like that. But then there's also coupons to local businesses, free ice cream cone, free sub, free pass to roller skating, things like that. And then there's also experience prizes, which the kids seem to love the most. And that is things like whoever gets this prize gets to help you plan the next youth program. Or whoever gets this prize gets to have a movie night at the library with 3 of their friends. And they really love that. They like the experience prizes even more than the physical prizes in my experience. And then this chapter also talks about my experience with the summer lunch program, as well as a couple other libraries' experiences with the summer lunch program. This chapter is on taking chances with your programming, and it's about, as Miss Frizzle says, taking chances, making mistakes, and getting messy. And so we start off this chapter by talking about how your programs are going to fail, and it's okay. And we talk about how to deal with that and get in the mind space to move on from that. And we also talk about why a program might fail. I want to acknowledge a sentence that is in this chapter that I really wish was not in this chapter. And that is the sentence that says, J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times before Harry Potter was published. And look at her now. And listen, that sentence did not age well, and I apologize. And I would not have written it if I had known then what I know now. I also included a thing about a Harry Potter party that, again, I would not have included, so I do apologize. But what I meant by that was programming is more of a marathon than a sprint. And no matter how long a librarian has been programming, everybody's going to have programs that are flops. It just happens. But that shouldn't dissuade you from taking risks in your programming. Some of my favorite programs I've had have resulted from taking risks. So this photo on the left is me and Elizabeth Berg, and Elizabeth Berg's partner and manager, Bill, and her dog, Gabby. And she came to my library, my population 250 library, on one of her tours. And did this happen in 2017, 3 years ago? Yes, it did. Will I ever stop bringing it up in my presentations? No, I will not, because I am convinced this was my peak in my library career, and I will never do anything better than this because it was so cool. And I've loved Elizabeth Berg for years. This happened because I sent a random email out to her manager because she was doing a Midwest library tour, but not visiting any libraries in Iowa. And I threw my hat into the ring, even though the schedule was already finalized. And the phone rang 5 minutes after I sent the email, and it was Bill asking if we would be their last stop on the tour. And it was amazing and wonderful, and it was the best adult program ever. And it would never have happened, ever, if I had not sent that email that, frankly, I didn't even expect a response to. So you never know what can happen if you take that risk, and the worst they can say is no. You don't have to be a big library to have large-scale programs. No matter how small you are, you can have large-scale programs for not a lot of money. The photo on the right is the carnival we do. We've done it every summer, except this one, of course, for the last 3 summers. And if you do a program like this, you will want to ask for help. My first summer, I did not ask for help, and I regretted it greatly. And it's fun. It brings in about double the population of our entire town, and it only really takes about $300 out of our programming budget because of a fundraiser that we do, and you can read a lot more details about that in the book. Fundraising. Honestly, this was not a very fun chapter to write, but it is super important, and I think it's helpful. And will be helpful to a lot of you. What I talk about in this chapter, we talk about some misconceptions people might have about asking for money. For example, funders only care about numbers. That's not necessarily true. We'll come back to that in a second. And then I talk about getting city funding, getting increases in city funding. And I want to say, listen, I'm not above a little bit of butt kissing when it comes to your city council. If it results in more money for the library, why not? So it's important to include the city council in your decisions and make them feel important. Here, I want to tell a really quick story that I was not able to include in the book, partly because of space, partly because I'm scared of this man that the story's about, and I'm afraid he was going to track me down and yell at me. But, okay, so prior to 2018, the library had not had a city increase in funding since the year 2000. Things are a little different in 2018 than they were in 2000, so we were overdue. So I got this presentation together. I had an infographic with all these charts and graphs and bright colors and stuff. It was beautiful, and I made a presentation. And I asked if anyone had any questions. And this man, this known troublemaking man, raised his hand. He was in the audience, not on the council. And he said, why should the city pour a bunch of money into a library that is clearly failing? And I said, could you explain what you mean by failing? And he pointed at this bar chart. And I had one thing that said, this is how much things cost in the year 2000. This is how much things cost in the year 2018. Despite that, here is our income in 2000. Here is our income in 2018. He pointed at this one and he said, well, looking at this from a business perspective, your library hasn't brought in any more income in 18 years. So why would we want to waste all of our money on a library that clearly no one cares about? And I said, well, that a library isn't a business. We're not meant to bring in income. We provide services to the community. And he's like, well, I'm just wondering, who is this library helping, really? And when I get angry, I cry. It's very unfortunate, but that's what happens. I cry. And so through my tears, I said, just because libraries have changed dramatically does not make them any less relevant. And I went on this spiel crying, and it was embarrassing and uncomfortable. And there was a really long silence. And then the mayor finally said, well, we're going to give you the money. And so I got what I was after. And so the moral to this story is, people don't always understand how libraries are funded or how libraries even work. B, you're going to run into some a-holes along the way. C, if you want to resort to crying, it works sometimes. I guess that's the moral of that story. But we also talk about passive and active fundraising in this chapter. I talk about the importance of having a signature fundraiser at your library. Ours is our baked potato bar fundraiser, which is always pretty successful and easy. Tips for grant writing, and following up after a grant or donation and nurturing that relationship. And then I love this quote, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that goes back to the myth that your funders only care about numbers. I think it means more for you to share a great, powerful story with your funders than it is to just throw a bunch of numbers at them. I find that nothing really gets funders' attention like a great story, and that they're more likely to donate to you if you can make them feel something. So the marketing chapter talks a lot about being an advocate for your library and being embedded in your community. In a town like mine, I don't know about your town, but in a town like mine, everybody knows who I am. Everybody knows who my family is. And when I go out in town or the surrounding towns, there are eyes on me, and I'm the face of the library. And I always have to kind of keep that in the back of my mind, just because I am so closely associated with the library. And that can be a lot sometimes if everyone knows who you are. But I think it's an important thing for us to remember. So I go into that a little bit. And then talk about social media best practices, out of the box places and ways to advertise. And then I have a little contribution from Rebecca McCorkindale from the Gretna Public Library in Nebraska. She's amazing. She writes the blog Hafuboti. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's an amazing blog. She's one of the founders of the Libraries Are for Everyone campaign that you see here. She's got a lot of different ones. She has them in all different languages. This one is the Black Lives Matter heart, which I love. And you can find those on her website, which I can share in the chat after this is over. And right now, her blog is down and all of her archives are gone, but she's working on rebuilding it. So I encourage you to go check out her archives, which are wonderful, once she gets that back up. And she has a couple other contributions throughout the book as well. Burnout is, this is, I think, the chapter in the book that I'm most passionate about. It's also the last chapter of the book. Someone was reading through this book and said, I think you should take this chapter out because it doesn't seem to match the tone of the rest of the chapters. Maybe it would be better suited for another project. And while I don't disagree that the tone is a little bit different, I just sound a little bit bitter maybe, but I think this chapter is so important and I really wanted to keep it in there because our jobs, there's not a lot of jobs like ours, particularly in a rural and small library where the responsibilities are many times on one person's shoulders. And we have to wear all of the hats. Especially, I can't even imagine a one-person library. I mean, we are not only the library director, we are the youth librarian, teen librarian, outreach librarian. We do the marketing, IT, we do the accounting, we do the cleaning, the gardening, the babysitting. We do the babysitting sometimes. And there's not a lot of jobs that are like that. And it can be really exhausting sometimes, particularly if your library is not part of a system. It can feel isolating at times, like you're alone on this little island with nobody to really bounce ideas off of or vent to. And often you can feel unappreciated. And I know how that goes. I'm sure you all do too. People don't really understand all of the work, all the blood, sweat, and tears that goes on behind the scenes. And it can be hard to want to improve your community when you're running on empty all the time, especially in these times. It's tough and it can easily lend itself to burnout. I apologize if you can hear my dog right now. He is dreaming and doing little yelps in his sleep. So I talk in this chapter about the various symptoms of burnout, including like irritability, feeling more cynical, unsatisfied with accomplishments, losing your passion for things you used to love, and a lot of various physical symptoms. I do want to say that a lot of these symptoms really closely mirror symptoms of things like clinical depression, and that if you are experiencing these symptoms, look, I'm sweating right now. Cool. If you are experiencing these symptoms, I think it's so important that you ask a mental health professional. I'm not a doctor, I don't know. So see a mental health professional before you decide that it's burnout. And I also believe that there's no shame in getting help for your mental health. It's just like any other part of your body. And I know that I said this in a presentation yesterday, but I think some type of therapy should almost be required for people working in a service profession, just because it's hard and it's stressful sometimes. And I personally, I have clinical depression. I have for years. And for the past 5 years, I've been in therapy on and off, and there's no shame in that. And I think we need to talk about it more because it's normal. And self-care does not replace mental health care. I think it's important to remember that and remember to put on your own oxygen mask before you can help others. I also talk about a lot of contributing factors that could be contributing to your burnout, things like demands at home, a struggle to say no, I cannot say no, and that really can lead to burnout. And then I also talk about some tips to avoid burnout. So some self-care tips, some strategies you can use if you feel yourself going down that path, balancing that work and home life, finding your people to vent to lean on, and remembering that we are not superheroes. We can't do it all, and we shouldn't be expected to. And I want to say sometimes there seems to be this unspoken expectation that we are going to make personal sacrifices to better serve our community. And I don't feel that it should be that way. For example, things like don't take vacation during summer reading. No, no, no. Better not call in sick, even if you're not feeling well, because we've got that big event coming up that you need to prepare for. Things like that are not healthy to me. And a good workplace should support its employees and not basically encourage burnout or force it upon them by enforcing those kinds of rules. So yeah, I just want to say that put your own mental health before your job if you feel that you need to. On a lighter note, the last part of the book is about relighting your programming fire. If you are in a funk, if you're feeling burnt out or down, I list a whole bunch of resources, because one of the best things that works for me to motivate me and re-inspire me to want to program is finding that burst of inspiration, that really cool idea. I love reading through library blogs, the archives, and seeing like, oh, a cat cafe. I could do a cat cafe at my library. I'm so excited to work on that. And so I list a whole bunch of websites, library blogs, webinars, podcasts, listservs, things like that to help you find your programming motivation again. And I hope that you walk away from this book feeling hopeful about the future, feeling hopeful about when we're able to do in-person programs again, and feeling inspired. And also, you're doing amazing, sweetie. We're all doing the best we can, and you're doing amazing. When we do questions, I also want to encourage anybody with questions, or if you just want to vent or whatever, to contact me. There's my email address. I love hearing from other librarians, so that's all I got.
Well, Chelsea, thank you so much. A lot of great ideas there, and someone in the Q&A has already commended you on how relatable you are, and I absolutely agree on that.
Thank you.
Before I get to some of the questions we've got in the space here, I just wanted to ask you a question that I have, which is, with the pandemic going on, what ways have you found to keep in touch with the community that you serve?
So I have been doing deliveries, which will not work for every community, but it works for mine because we're so tiny. I know where everybody lives. I know what books most of my patrons want. So they reach out to me by phone or through email, and I deliver the books. No contact, hang it on their doorknob and leave. That's what we've been doing. I've also did some grab and go crafts for kids over the summer, and I'll probably start up again depending on how much longer we're going to be closed. And yeah, I mean, like I said, this community, my work life and my home life is so intertwined, which I burn out, all that stuff. But I find it easy to keep in contact with most of my patrons.
Great. Okay, so let me get to some of the questions. And while I'm answering these, the attendees, if you have more questions, paste them into the question and answer box, not into the chat space, although I guess I would see them in either place, but it's easier for me to keep track of them if they're in the Q&A box. Anyhow, the first question is from Chris, and he asks, what is your programming budget?
Right now it's $2,500, and I had to cut from other areas to get it to be that way. I think when I started it was $1,500. Now it's $2,500. Yeah, it can be tough to stay within that, but that's what I got.
Okay, our next question is from Joe. She asks, do you have a network online to help you manage the demands of your job? So how do you like to practice self-care?
Well, I talk a lot about this in that chapter of my book, so go and buy it. But I will say I find a lot of comfort in some of those library Facebook groups. I know some of them can be a little messy and a little drama, but I like, if I have a problem, I like knowing that there's someone out there who has had the same problem I have. My favorite is probably the Programming Librarian Facebook page, the Facebook group, or the Tiny Library Think Tank Facebook group. That's who I like to bounce my ideas off of. Before the pandemic, I was kicking around getting like an Iowa group of tiny libraries to meet once a quarter or something. But, you know, who knows when that could happen.
Okay, we've got time for a couple more questions because I know you all want to get to the big main speaker. So while I'm waiting for a couple more questions to pop into the chat space, the question I have is, do you ever get ideas from the community about things to do, or, you know, library type stuff that you've incorporated into your own library?
Um, yeah, definitely. I had actually some community members reached out to me about doing that office trivia night. And I jumped right on it because I love The Office, and I had quite a few patrons that did too, so that worked out really well. Um, and the carnival actually came about because someone asked me. It takes place on the Saturday before the 4th of July, the day Missouri has fireworks. They asked me if the library would want to do something because we had never participated before for whatever reason. And I think she thought I would do a story time or something, and I maybe stupidly said, no, I'll do a carnival. And it ended up being a lot of work, but it's become a huge event in Missouri. So that's something that I think the community really needed, even if they didn't ask for it specifically.
Awesome. Well, while we're wrapping stuff up here, I just want to mention you may go to the ALA store to try and find Chelsea's book, but as the tech gremlins would have it, our store is currently undergoing some maintenance, so you can't find her book on the store. But let us assure you that it does exist. It is a real book. It is in print. It is available. And I guess some people are having trouble reading my stuff that I've been posting into chat, but we have a $5 off coupon that you can use on the ALA store. You can order by phone, by fax, or email. That information is still available on the store. The coupon code is M, P as in penny, I, B as in book, 20. So MPIB20, and that's good for $5 off Chelsea's book at the ALA store. Of course, you can also get it from Amazon and a bunch of other places. So thanks for being patient with us. You know, these days we all need patience because we're all learning how to do this on the fly. We wish that we could be at the conference in person, but we're really pleased that we could connect with Chelsea this way. Chelsea, do you have any final words before we sign off?
I don't think so. Thanks everybody for coming to hang out.
And thanks again for coming to this presentation, and thanks again for your support of ALA. Have a great rest of the conference, everyone.